am Dominus Cinephile.
Welcome to my movie and TV series reviews, where I will provide honest opinions of the latest releases. If the movie or TV series is a hit or a miss, be sure to know I will inform you. But if the movie or series is trash, be also sure to know that I will trash the hell out of the movie. I am Dominus Cinephile.
And the movie on the review table today is the Nollywood film After 30. After 30 is a 2025 Nollywood drama directed by Omorinsojo Spaine and produced by Ronke Ayeni. Attempts to resurrect the story that began 10 years ago in the TV series Before 30, which aired on DSTV's Africa Magic on March 29, 2015. With a cast stacked with familiar faces: Damilola Adegbite, Beverly Naya, Meg Otanwa, Anee Icha, Ukeje, Patrick Diabuah, and Samuel Asa'ah. The film positions itself as a long-awaited sequel. But does it live up to that anticipation? Picking up exactly where the 8-episode series ended, After 30 dives back into the lives of 4 Nigerian women, now well into their 30s, wrestling with the unrelenting pressure to marry, stay relevant, and keep it all together. But time has not been kind, not to them, and not to the illusion of stability they once clung to. The plot spirals through broken relationships, career compromises, and crumbling facades of friendship. Old flames reappear with unfinished business. One friend faces a taboo same-sex attraction that forces her to confront long-suppressed truths. Another watches her perfect marriage disintegrate before her eyes. And through it all, the bond that once held them together begins to unravel, slowly, painfully, and perhaps irreversibly. As the masks slip and the lies surface, one question lingers. Can friendship survive when everything else falls apart? Or was it all just a fragile performance from the beginning? Whether After 30 is a bold continuation or just a half-hearted echo of what once worked is a question that lingers long after the credits roll. I stumbled onto this film by pure chance. I'd never seen the original 2015 series Before 30, so I figured it was only fair to watch a few episodes online to understand the backstory. Well, I couldn't make it through all 8. By the time I hit episode 3, the sluggish pacing, flat dialogue, and uninspired acting had already worn me down. Still, I pressed on and jumped into After 30, hoping at the very least for an upgrade in storytelling or emotional depth. What I got instead was a tangled mess of half-baked subplots, hollow performances, and a drama so weak it barely held itself together. There's a lot to unpack, but most of it feels like emotional noise, loud, chaotic, and ultimately empty. Instead of evolving the story or deepening the characters, the film leans heavily on recycled conflicts and cheap twists. It's as if the writers were more interested in ticking boxes, sexuality, marriage pressure, failed relationships, than in actually exploring them with nuance or care. The movie opens with Temi at the airport, narrating the story in voiceover, a stylistic choice that runs through the entire film. At first, it seems like the narration might add depth or cohesion, but trust me, we'll circle back to that. For now, stay with me. Temi's opening monologue is centered on a ladybug she spots on her bag, an odd, almost forced metaphor that tries too hard to be profound. The visuals here are clean but far from impressive. The CGI airport backdrop is noticeably artificial, stripping the scene of any realism and reminding viewers that Nollywood still struggles with believable post-production effects. Once the story shifts into gear and the 4 main friends are introduced, the déjà vu hits hard. It becomes painfully clear that After 30 borrows heavily, if not shamelessly, from recent Hollywood shows like Amazon Prime's Harlem and HBO's Insecure. The characters, their dynamics, and even some of the situations feel lifted straight from those series. only diluted in execution. I've never been a fan of Nollywood replicating or ripping off Hollywood content. But if you must take inspiration, at least own it, refine it, elevate it, and give credit where it's due. Instead, what we get here is a poor imitation without the wit, nuance, or authenticity that made those original shows resonate in the first place. It's one thing to be influenced, it's another to mimic without purpose. One of the most baffling scenes in After 30 is when Temi meets Kunle Ortega at a lawyer's gathering held, oddly, in a library. This scene is presented as a turning point, a fated meeting between two characters who are clearly meant to have a romantic arc. But here's the problem. Nothing in the entire film establishes Kunle as a lawyer or even remotely connected to the legal world. So what exactly is he doing there? Is he a guest? A speaker? A guy who just wandered into a legal networking event with a glass of wine and charisma? The film never tells us, and worse, it doesn't seem to care. This is where the writing and direction fall completely flat. Instead of crafting a believable, organic meeting that adds weight to their connection, the scene feels shoehorned in, like the writers couldn't be bothered to build a real setup. The library setting is underutilized, the dialogue is thin, and the moment lacks any emotional payoff. It's lazy plotting, masquerading as serendipity. There were so many better, more natural ways to have these two characters cross paths, especially in a city as dynamic and layered as Lagos. But what we get instead is a contrived scene that exposes the film's weak character development and careless storytelling. It's a missed opportunity and a clear sign that the film is more interested in checking romantic drama boxes than telling a grounded, coherent story. I honestly couldn't wrap my head around some of the so-called comic relief scenes in this movie. It was painfully obvious that no real thought went into crafting them. They felt lazy, out of place, and completely disconnected from the tone of the film. Take, for instance, the scene where Temi travels to Abuja for a case. In a move that defies both logic and storytelling, her Uber driver just happens to stop directly in front of her ex-boyfriend's apartment. As if that coincidence wasn't absurd enough, the ex spots her through the window, and Temi, suddenly panicked, ducks awkwardly in the back seat, begging the driver to leave. What follows is a cringe-worthy attempt at humor. Instead of driving off, the Uber driver refuses and starts spewing jokes that are not only unfunny, but painfully misplaced. The scene is supposed to be funny, maybe even charming in its awkwardness, but it lands with a heavy thud. The jokes are flat, the timing is off, and the entire moment feels like it was ripped from a badly written skit. Let's give the benefit of the doubt and assume this driver is new to Abuja or just arrived from some remote village, because otherwise, there's no explanation for why a professional driver would ignore a client's urgent request and start babbling about company policies like it's a stand-up show. Who wrote this? And more importantly, who approved it? This scene is a textbook example of bad writing, illogical setup, poor execution, and an attempt at humor that not only falls flat, but drags the film down with it. It's moments like these that make After 30 feel more like a rough draft than a finished product. Another painfully ridiculous moment in this weak, hollow imitation of a film is the scene where Ayo shows up at a bridal boutique where Temi is trying on her wedding gown. As expected, we're fed the same monotonous, one-dimensional dialogue Nollywood is infamous for. Dry, emotionless lines exchanged without any depth or urgency. Then, in a fit of melodramatic rage, Temi storms out of the shop and drives off, wearing only the inner lining of her wedding dress. Her chest exposed. No sense of realism, just pure madness on screen. And just when you think the writing couldn't get any worse, it does. She's pulled over by the police. And what follows is a scene so insultingly dumb, it feels like a parody of itself. Remember, the film establishes Temi as a brilliant, accomplished woman, a high-powered lawyer on the verge of becoming a senior advocate of Nigeria. But the moment she's stopped by the police, all that intelligence magically evaporates. Instead of asserting her rights or even holding a conversation like a professional, she crumbles, weeping and pleading like a clueless teenager caught skipping school. It's absurd. A character painted as sharp, successful, and self-assured is suddenly reduced to a helpless caricature, trembling and begging while being accused ludicrously of prostitution. And no, she doesn't argue, question the officers, or even attempt to defend herself. She just cowers and cries, waiting for Ayo to swoop in and play savior. This scene doesn't just insult the viewer's intelligence, it disrespects its own character development. It undermines Temi's entire arc, all for the sake of lazy, manufactured tension. Having Ayo step in to rescue her wasn't just weak storytelling, it was a complete collapse of logic and narrative consistency. Remember when I mentioned Temi's narration at the start of the movie? Well, it doesn't just start the film, it drags on throughout the entire runtime. While it occasionally offers a bit of explanation about what's happening on screen, it feels more like an awkward voiceover from a low-budget documentary than a narrative tool in a supposed drama. And that's the real issue. This isn't a documentary. It's supposed to be a story with emotional weight, character arcs, and visual storytelling. But instead of showing us who Temi is, the film resorts to spoon-feeding us her thoughts like the audience can't be trusted to think for themselves. As I've already explained, narration, when done right, enhances a story. But here, it's painfully obvious that the director and writer used it as a lazy crutch to prop up weak, directionless storytelling. The narration doesn't deepen the character or add insight. It just clumsily fills in the blanks of a story full of gaps and contradictions. It's a patch job on a script that's already leaking from every angle. This is a textbook example of how not to use narration. Overdone, unnecessary, and completely detached from the emotion and rhythm of the scenes. It doesn't guide the audience. It distracts, annoys, and exposes the film's biggest flaw, a lack of confidence in its own narrative. Instead of tightening the plot or developing stronger dialogue, the creators resorted to voiceover band-aids to cover up a story that was never fully developed in the first place. It's not all shadow and darkness over After 30. The movie does attempt to broaden its romantic narrative by introducing a subplot where one of the characters begins to question and explore her sexuality. It's a bold angle for a Nollywood film, and in theory, it should have added complexity to her character and opened up relevant conversations. But much like the rest of the movie, the execution feels borrowed, and not in a good way. Let's be honest, the entire LGBTQ+ thread feels like a half-baked replica of what we've already seen in Hollywood, shows like Insecure and Harlem, where one of the core friends navigates life while identifying as queer. Those shows handle the subject with nuance, emotional tension, and most importantly, character depth. In After 30, it's more like a checked box than a well-developed arc. The character's confusion, her attraction, her fear, none of it is explored with real emotional weight. It's all surface level, rushed, and thrown in, as if the writers felt the need to follow a trend rather than tell a genuine story. The idea had potential. In fact, it could have been one of the film's most meaningful narratives if the writing had committed to it. But instead, it's introduced quietly, mishandled, and left without resolution or proper exploration. What should have been a powerful, self-defining journey for the character ends up as yet another plotline that leads nowhere. So yes, there was a chance to create something honest and progressive here. But just like much of After 30, it collapses under its own lack of substance. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Nollywood has a serious research problem. Too many productions dive headfirst into complex subjects without doing even the bare minimum of homework. And After 30 is yet another glaring example of this careless approach. Take, for instance, the scene where the character Aisha travels abroad with Nkem to undergo a tubal ligation so she won't have another child. As she lies on the hospital bed, the so-called doctor, trying to sound authoritative, tells her that once the procedure is done, there's no going back. Really? At this point, you start to wonder if the actor playing the doctor is confused or if the director and writer are just dangerously misinformed. Because here's the fact. Tubal ligation is a permanent form of birth control. Yes, but it can be reversed through a surgical procedure known as tubal reversal. It's not always guaranteed to work, but it does exist. A simple Google search would have cleared that up. So why does the film present it as some irreversible, end-of-the-road operation with no options? It's either lazy writing or an embarrassing lack of basic medical understanding. And in a story that already struggles to feel grounded, this kind of misinformation just pushes it deeper into absurdity. In plain English, tied tubes can be untied. Someone shout this into the director's ears before the next script meeting. Let's get into the performances, starting with Damilola Adegbite as Temi. Frankly, her delivery was flat, uninspired, and alarmingly shallow for a character meant to carry the emotional weight of the film. Her scenes lacked urgency, emotion, and authenticity. It's as if she coasted through the role without ever truly connecting to the character. And while the overbearing narration robbed many scenes of meaningful dialogue, Damilola still had plenty of opportunities to command the screen and failed to do so. Her chemistry with her love interest was non-existent. Her moments with Samuel Asa'ah's Kunle Ortega felt awkward and painfully artificial, more like a badly rehearsed play than a movie with real stakes. As the lead, she was supposed to be the soul of the film, but instead, she came across as stiff, disconnected, and emotionally hollow. Now to Samuel Asa'ah, who delivered a performance so weak and forgettable it's hard to believe he was meant to play a suave, wealthy suitor. His portrayal of Kunle Ortega was bland, charisma-free, and downright robotic. He had zero screen presence and absolutely no understanding of the character's supposed charm or depth. The man looked the part physically, sure, but once he opened his mouth, any illusion of sophistication or romantic allure evaporated. He moved through his scenes with the energy of someone doing a table read, not acting in a full-length feature film. If this was meant to be the character Temi falls for, the audience is left questioning her sanity, not rooting for their love story. The only actor who brought any real weight to her role was Meg Otanwa as Aisha. She delivered a layered, emotionally rich performance that felt honest and lived in. Portraying a mother battling postpartum depression, Meg infused every scene with vulnerability and strength. She didn't just act, she embodied the character. Her multilingual delivery, effortlessly switching to French and Hausa, added nuance and authenticity. In a cast filled with empty performances and soulless dialogue, Meg stood out like a lighthouse in a storm. In summary, After 30 is a movie that had the potential to be great and entertaining, but ended up being a shallow, poorly executed mess. The script is burdened with weak, forgettable dialogue, and the over-reliance on narration stripped the film of the emotional conversations and character development it so desperately needed. It's painfully obvious that little to no research went into the story, from legal inaccuracies to laughable medical misinformation. The actors, save for Meg Otanwa, did little to salvage the wreck. Damilola Adegbite and Samuel Asa'ah, the leads, offered dull, wooden performances that lacked passion, chemistry, or believability. Otanwa was the only one who brought depth, pain, and humanity to her role. The director's vision, if there was one, was lost in translation. Scenes were awkwardly blocked, transitions lacked rhythm, and the entire film felt like a rough draft that was rushed into production. Worst of all, the movie has no infotainment value. There's nothing to learn, no message to take home, and certainly no inspiration. Instead, it lazily leans into tired stereotypes and ends up painting a shallow, borderline offensive picture of modern African women. For a story that claimed to represent sisterhood, strength, and growth, After 30 offered none of that. It's all style with no substance. A hollow attempt at storytelling that collapses under the weight of its own missed opportunities. And now for my rating. After 30 scores a well-deserved 2 out of 10. I'm definitely trashing this. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications. Also, be sure to follow me on TikTok, WhatsApp channel, and Instagram at Domino's Cinephile for more movie and TV series reviews. Domino's Cinephile, signing out.